Okay. All right, Thune. Enough. Sam. We're gym buddies, so we can talk like that to each other.
What does he call you?
We're gym buddies, so we can talk like that to each other.
What does he call you?
I don't know. Well, let me tell you, he looks a lot better in the gym than I do, let me tell you. And he lifts a lot more weights and does a lot more exercise. Okay, everyone here, I'm delighted to be joined by my colleagues, Bernie Sanders, who's the ranking member on our Budget Committee, and Debbie Stabenow and Jeff Merkley, who are members of the committee. Now, let me say this. Simply put, the Trump budget takes a sledgehammer to the middle class and working Americans, lavishes tax breaks on the very wealthy, and imagines all of the deficit problems away with fantasy math. This budget exists somewhere over the rainbow where the dreams of Mick Mulvaney, Paul Ryan, and the Koch brothers really do come true. Of course, those dreams are a nightmare for working families in America. If you'd ever want to see a budget that reveals what an administration is all about, this is it. It's just brutal. To the very people Donald Trump campaigned with and who voted for him. And it gives huge rewards to the wealthiest people in America. God bless them, but they're doing just fine. And every place you look in this budget, there are new awful surprises. And they're going to continue to surprise us for the next while. It is no wonder that Mitch McConnell did not embrace the budget. In fact, he distanced himself from it. I think most Republicans will do that too, which shows you how out of touch Donald Trump is with America and how far away he is from where he campaigned, how far away he is from helping Americans, how he is breaking promise after promise after promise to the working Americans. The budget cuts transportation funding, education funding. It makes it harder for students to repay their student loan debt. Cuts an $800 billion, an additional $600 billion in Medicaid, in addition to the over $800 billion the House health care bill cut. And Medicaid, make no mistake about it, it helps the poor, and that's a good thing, but it has become a middle-class program. 60% of the people in nursing homes, Medicaid is what helps them pay for it. And so this is going to affect many average Americans. You're a family, a couple, 45 years old, you're a couple, you're each 45, you have 3 kids, you're saving for college, you're struggling to pay the bills, but at least you know that Dad, who's ill, is in a nursing home. After this bill passes, the choice is going to be pay thousands of dollars more a month out of your own pocket or take Dad home, and there may be no room for him. It's just everywhere you look. Senator Cornyn stated the budget's a proposal of the president's priorities. If we could assemble every American in a football stadium and just tell them what this budget is about, Trump's numbers would go down to about 5%. And that's why our Republicans are running away from it. So, and one more thing. On the campaign trail, presidential candidate Trump said he's not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. Well, so far, 2 out of those 3 are now being cut. Social Security disability, which so many people need, and make no mistake about it, if the hard right gets away with cutting Social Security disability, they'll be after Social Security old age benefits next. And of course, they clobber Medicaid. The irony of the Trump budget is that it hurts many of the people who supported him most in the campaign. That's the great irony of the budget. When you add it all up, the Trump budget is a comic book villain bad budget. And just like comic books, it relies on fantasy to make the numbers work. There's only one bit of optimism here. Our Republican colleagues dislike this budget almost as much as we do. And so if the likelihood is what happened with the 2017 budget will happen here. Democrats and Republicans will tell President Trump and his minions to stay at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. Let us work out a budget together that will make America a better place. Bernie Sanders.
Thanks, sir. Let me concur with what Chuck just said. But let me add this. What this budget amounts to is an unprecedented transfer. Let me add this. What this budget amounts to is an unprecedented transfer of wealth in the United States from the middle class and working families to the very, very wealthiest people in this country. Listen to this. By repealing the estate tax, the Walton family, worth $130 billion, will get up to a $53 billion tax break at the same time as this budget will drive children off of the Children's Health Insurance Program, deny millions of people the health care they desperately need, make it harder for working class kids to go to college, slash environmental protections. So what we are seeing is unprecedented tax breaks for the people who don't need it and devastating cuts for programs that the middle class, working families, and lower income people do need. This is a budget that is bad economics. It is immoral. It is a budget that the American people will reject, and it is a budget that must not see the light of day in Congress.
Senator Stabenow.
Well, thank you. First, let me underscore what my colleagues have said so far. This is a budget for the wealthiest Americans, puts more money in their pocket, and turns its back on everybody trying to stay in the middle class or trying to get into the middle class. It's really quite shocking when you look at the priorities that are revealed. And I want to specifically talk about small towns in rural America where I grew up in northern Michigan. Farmers and families in every small town will be hurt by this budget. 21% across the board cut in the Department of Agriculture, plus another $231 billion in rural opportunities and jobs, all across Michigan, all across the country. Can you imagine zeroing out funding for rural and water sewer projects in small towns? Zeroing out help for small businesses to get started or expand and create new businesses. Small airports. Many parts of the country, it's very difficult to be able to connect for medical care or for jobs, and they, again, attack small airports and police and fire services and hospitals that we've talked so much about. My mother was director of nursing at a small town hospital in Clare, and under these Medicaid cuts, which, by the way, phase in over 10 years to about a 50% cut in Medicaid, hospitals like where my mom was a nurse will close. Doctors will go away, and oftentimes this is the largest employer, and those jobs will be gone as well. Telehealth or housing or the 25% cut in food assistance, where this disproportionately goes to small towns and poverty and rural communities around America. And on top of that, we're at a time for agriculture where prices are down and many family farmers are just trying to hold on. What I hear all the time from people around Michigan is they want their small town to be a place where their children will come back after going to college, to come back and be part of the community. If you got the quality of life and the jobs and you don't support technology like broadband so that you can live and grow and have a business in small towns, we won't have small towns. And it's shocking to see how Donald Trump has turned his back on them.
Jeff Merkley.
This is not an America First budget. This is a billionaire's first budget. And it's a rural America last budget. Rural development, cut 30%. Rural business services, wiped out. Rural renting, rural rental housing, diminished. Rural transportation, affected profoundly. payment in lieu of taxes, so important to those of us in the West who have large amounts of federal land, decreased. And of course, CDBG and home, which are used flexibly by our rural communities to take on some of their worst and most challenging problems, and even rural postal service threatened by a $46 billion cut. And then throw in the airports, throw in the ag budget, the things that my colleague from Michigan has mentioned. It's a nightmare for rural America and a nightmare for working Americans. Has mentioned. It's a nightmare for rural America and a nightmare for working Americans.
Questions for any of us?
Senator Schumer, do you think that General Flynn should come before the Intelligence Committee, and even though he's going to invoke the Fifth, sit there, take questions, be peppered? We've seen that type of exercise before.
Well, first, he ought to comply with their request for documents. There is no immunity from or Fifth Amendment rights when it comes to documents, and therefore he ought to send those over. My strong suspicion is that the committees will then ask him to come, and I think he should come.
What would the next step to that be? Would you be in favor of holding him in contempt if he does not comply ultimately?
Well, we'll leave that up to the committees, but he should comply, and there will be consequences if he doesn't.
Republicans aren't going to follow the Trump budget in setting the spending bills, but McConnell just said he's going to be negotiating with you on the top line numbers for those spending bills. What should those top line numbers be? Should they be set to the BCA caps from 2011, or should they be higher?
Just as
By how
we
much?
have in the 2016 budget and the 2017 budget, or the 2017 budget, yeah, in the 2016, we'll be laying out our principles that we will adhere to. We had great success in meeting those principles in the 2017 budget, and I suspect we'll have great success in the 2018 budget. When Donald Trump said a few weeks ago that maybe the government ought to shut down, he's putting his Republican colleagues in the House and Senate in a real box. Other questions?
Have any of those talks started with the Republicans?
Not yet.
Have they
Not yet, but we expect them to. The budget just came out.
Can you, at a bare minimum, before the talks start, the Republicans have to say no cuts to domestic discretionary
Yeah,
spending?
we will be laying out our principles shortly.
Are there going to be concerted efforts on the campaign side? I see that Senator Collins in here, so I'll ask you, in terms of going after or highlighting these issues in rural states where you have...
Definitely. This is a very legitimate thing to bring to people's attention, that the president's budget just hurts rural America in very dramatic ways. He got huge support in rural America. If every one of them knows about this budget, his support would diminish severely.
Senator Schumer. The numbers in the Trump budget, do they take into account the Trump tax proposal?
He puts in a huge tax break, and then he said, and then the budget says, but somehow they will be revenue neutral, like magic. Ain't happening.